So the starting point for this conversation is going to be, what made you end up in shipping in the first place? Was it by accident or was it a master plan from growing up in Bergen?
Well, I think it wasn't a master plan, but shipping is a pretty important industry in Bergen. So I think I always had the view that shipping was attractive, international. Norway had a good, strong position. So it was an easy way to get into shipping after completing my studies.
Yeah. So let's take the segue over to Klaveness combination carriers, because if we just start with the concept, from my understanding, combining or the combination model has been present in Klaveness for many, many years in different aspects. So where is sort of the starting point, or is that very hard to find because it's always built on top on new projects and then merged together? Or how do you go about explaining sort of the
Because typically like a company which is now getting close to 80 years, of course they have their books, the anniversary books. And of course the first combination carrier that was built was in the 1950s. And I think that's one of the uniqueness of Klaveness, is that they have been in this type of ships consistently every year since the 1950s. But as you say, it was quite a bit smaller scale. And I think the decision was actually taken back in 2013, before I returned to Klaveness, that they identified the enormous business opportunities in in efficiencies that are in shipping, and also the idea that if you believe in higher energy prices, of course the value of efficiency will be much higher. So I think that was the reason why Klaveness started up already from 2013 to say that we want to invest and to grow in combination carriers to solve what we call the efficiency problems, enormous efficiency problems in shipping, and of course benefit from it. And also as time went by, of course the focus on decarbonization, the inevitability that shipping need to decarbonize. That of course came a couple of years later, but really enforced this what we call strategy that yes, to decarbonize, we need to be more efficient. And also the decarbonization also will lead to higher fuel costs eventually, because we need at some stage to transfer to new type of fuels.
Exactly. But if you go sort of from first principle and say that you want to go into the shipping industry and you want to have some sort of combination, and I think in the previous history it was some dry bulk with containers, but are there several options in combining, or you have to really understand, because you have a very niche and specialized and really well planned combination concept? Do you see many other different concepts, or is combination very it's easy to understand that it has to be A, B, and C combined together?
I think the starting point is of course that you have to what we call introducing combination carriers in a shipping business that's very efficient, that has cargo both ways, doesn't bring a lot of values, because there's always some degree of compromise in what you're doing. So the starting point, you have to identify the industries or the segments where you have big inefficiencies, where the ships, like in the tanker and the dry bulk space, are sailing long distances without any cargo on board. And of course there are some, we have been looking at a lot, and we are still working on new concepts, because we believe that what we have learned in what we have today, we can transfer to others. We looked at the combination carriers with containers, as you said. And we did experiment. We used some chartered-in ships. We got acceptance to do some smaller modifications, and we started transportation across the Trans-Pacific with empty containers. Of course, the US used different type of containers than for their domestic transportation that is normally used on the deep sea and in other parts of the world. And what we learned was that yes, the container ships are going to quite a high extent empty on the way back, typically from China, or empty boxes. But still, it's a totally different type of business, because it's really a very fine-tuned logistics system. you are dependent on actually that you have a ship coming once a week or every second week. You can't come every second month if you want to fill up the containers, because that was, the next step we had. So after understanding the dynamics of that industry, we understood pretty quickly that, even though we could build some smart ships, the fundamental of the business didn't really favor combination carriers. And then we have been looking at liquid pitch, which is another, typically bringing liquid pitch into the Middle East. Liquid pitch is something you use for the anodes for when you in aluminium, the smelting process of aluminium. And that in fact worked, but we were not competitive enough, competing against an incumbent that had a fleet of more time. So and we have said I can't reveal too much, but we are working at the moment with two concepts that we solving inefficiencies, of course benefiting from the inefficiencies, and especially when the industries start to plan for the 2030s, which it's not that far away. I mean, we are half a year, we are in 2025, in the middle of this decade. And then of course we know there will be stricter regulations, we know fuel will be more expensive, we know we have to transition to new fuels, and then efficiency again is key. And combination carriers can offer that if you do it in the right way. But it's not simple.
No, it can't be.
So,
but just to introduce the two different concepts, because for people who love to dive into shipping companies, they maybe understand it, but for people who are not really familiar and doesn't understand the different concepts, because of course they have some similarities, but they're quite different as well. What's the easiest way to break down the two concepts you have going on?
But if you allow me, Christopher, because I think it's important for the listeners to understand, these enormous inefficiencies you find in the dry bulk and tanker space. So typically, if we take a cargo of grain or sugar out of Brazil, and if you track through this AES system, the distance these ships have sailed empty, the average distance for a dry ship transporting grain or sugar out of Brazil is approximately the distance from Singapore to Brazil. So just imagine you have a ship burning more or less as much fuel as it does when it has cargo on board, sailing empty without any cargo on board around the globe. And you see the same to Australia. You see that the ships that are transporting iron ore or grains or coal out of Australia, they go empty all the way from the Far East to Australia. You see the same in the tanker sector. You see, for instance, a product tanker taking diesel into Argentina. They will typically sail, before they load in the Middle East, for instance, will sail from Singapore empty. And after they've discharged in Argentina, they sail empty to Europe or to the US Gulf. So that this enormous, I will call it waste in industry, is a really something that can be solved. And so then, back again to your question, Christopher, I think we have two types, as you said. We have the CABUs, which are basically a short for caustic bulkers. So they are both tankers and they are dry bulk ships at the same time. So when the CABUs are tankers, they mainly transport caustic soda. And caustic soda is a very heavy liquid cargo. It has specific gravity and 1.5. So that means we do not need, the full space in every of the cargo holds for caustic soda. So we transport caustic soda mainly now into Australia from the Middle East, from the Far East. And we also previously had a trade into Brazil, and we hope we can introduce that later on. So typically caustic soda from US Gulf down to, amongst others, Hydro's big alumina refinery back down in North Brazil. So the receivers of the caustic soda are, as mentioned, alumina refineries, but are also the growing lithium industry that are using caustic soda to refine dysprosium rock into lithium hydroxide that goes into the battery of cars. and also some other industries using caustic soda. So again, caustic soda into the regions like Australia that are big exporters of dry bulk, and then we clean, we shift, and we take out typically alumina into the Middle East, into the big smelters in the Middle East, like EGA and Bahrain Aluminium. We take grains, we take iron ore, we take bauxite, salt, and also coal from Australia into the Far East to China, Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. And that, of course, is again, we never go empty. So that means that the best trade is that we bring in caustic soda into the west coast of Australia, and in the same port we load alumina for the Middle East. And then coming to the Middle East, we have half a day sailing from discharging the alumina before we pick up the caustic soda in Saudi. This is a trade we have been doing since the late 1980s with different type of ships. So we started up with something called the Probos, which was again product tanker and bulk. So a little bit the predecessor of our CLEANBUs. And then we had two generations of CABUs, and we're coming in with the last generation of CABUs, which we contracted last year, that will be delivered in 2026.
Taking that decision to further invest in the fleet, is that an easy decision, given the recent success, or is it, calculations after calculations, risk adjustments, or is it keeping expanding because that's the right thing to do? In the decarbonization also piece, like you perfectly broken down as well.
Yeah. And I think, of course, the decision was partly based on a need to replace the older ships we have. So we have 3 old CABUs that are turning 25 in 2026. So we think we had partly a choice either to reduce, the business activity, or to use the new type of ships, the CLEANBUs, into the trade. And then, of course, as you say, that in order to deliver, step-by-step, more efficient and carbon-efficient solution, we need to introduce new ships as well. So what we did was that we worked a lot to try to perfect our solutions. So that means that we made it a little bit bigger, a bit wider, a little bit higher, in order to optimize the cargo intake. We did whatever we could to make the fuel efficiency of the ships better. And the great thing is that these ships we will introduce will be 40% lower carbon footprint than the ships that we are going to phase out. So that means it was a lot of calculations, a lot of how can we, in a market which is where ships' newbuilding prices have increased. I mean, it has increased since we contracted last year, but how can we get the best value out of the current newbuilding market? And that is, again, making the ships having higher earning capacity, making them more efficient.
Definitely. If you look at the combination carrier market, like when you talk about the business model and you have the optionality and you can take down risk because you can shift between cargoes, isn't it, how is like the development in people trying to do the same? Are they hesitant because it complicates things, or do you feel combination carriers are here to grow a lot in the next 5 to 10, 15 years?
I think it's difficult because I think you need to be extremely, determined to go into this space. Because I think if you look around, shipping is very, commoditized. It's very, a play. You are buying ships, you are chartering them for a year or 2 or 3, and you are selling them again. And of course, that's the fundamental of, I think, a very high proportion of ship owners is that buying and selling ships is a very important part of their business idea. And of course, our ships are not the best, sale and purchase ships. They're unique.
Yeah.
And of course, they're more expensive than the standard ships. Meaning that you have to build them because you believe you can generate higher cash flows, you can bridge difficult periods, you can create value over time. You need to train your crew. You have to, which of course is to take quite a bit of time to do. And we invested millions before we took over the last generation of ships. you have to design your ships alone, because we are not sharing our designs to anyone. And of course, we try to protect it as good as we can, both with the designers that help us design it, and of course the shipyards that build them. And then you have to set up the organization that are agile both on the tanker side and the dry bulk side. So to answer your question, Christopher, yes, I believe it's a solution which is, solves a lot of the future challenges. But the people that are going into it is people that is determined that this is something they want to be a part of and want to build over time and have the patience, the long-term mindedness and the funds to do it.
Definitely. So I've heard you talk about it before, so I just want to recap it a bit, because when you were in the expansion mode, you had deliveries on new vessels, you had weak markets and COVID hitting you at the same time. And then you said it was a tough period with challenges, but you came out strong of it. But maybe that's also showed us to run this business, you need to be in it for the long term and survive, hardships, because this is not like an easy asset play where you can sell ships and be done with the problem, right? So can you explain a bit how those years were?
Yeah, absolutely, but I think we have to take one step back, and then of course, we talked about the CABUs, and then of course, what we did was that when we wanted to expand the business, that we developed a new type of ships, the CLEANBUs, that are a little bit like the CABUs, but they can take all the CABUs, they can do whatever the CABUs do, but they are built to transport other type of liquids, and that is hydrocarbons, that's diesel, gasoline, jet fuel, all vegetable oils and so on. So these ships were designed and it was contracted back in the first task I got when I was back in Klaveness. It was contracted in 2015. The first ship was delivered in 2019 and they were successively delivered in up to the summer of 2021. So as you said, it was difficult because one was, of course, that we had some technical issues with, because it was a prototype. It was the first type of ship that was built under new regulations, and of course the shipyard hadn't done it before. Now had we, at least that were many years ago since we introduced that type of ship. So we had some technical challenges. The first ship has to go back to the shipyard, and also we had some challenges with number 2 and 3. The last 5 has been very successful. And then the second thing, of course, was that when we built the ships, there were no customers that wanted to use them. So I think,
Because of the risk, or because it was something new, or?
No, it was because it was something new, but at the same time, this type of concept had a legacy back in the 70s and 80s. So we believe we reinvented these type of combination carriers that could transport hydrocarbons. But at the same time, if you go into any of the big oil companies, there always will be the guy in the corner that, you remember the OBOs in the 1980s? They were not good. They had problems with the cleaning. There were contamination of cargo. They were not well maintained, so on and so on and so on.
So stay away from that, he would say.
Stay away from that. And in fact, many oil companies had, and some even today, some have, the policy that they do not use combination carriers, or they have a requirement that the last 3 cargoes of what you call petroleum products need to be petroleum products. That means they do not accept the last cargo to be dry. And of course, if the last cargo, you can't have a last cargo dry, the whole concept is destroyed. So that meant that when we contracted the ships in 2015, we didn't have one single customer willing to use us. So that has been the tough thing also, that we got delivery of the ships, the market was low. If we could give any discounts to get into the market, to prove to our customers that it worked, the value of the discount was very small. Yeah. So we used a lot of time to get the customers to try us out, and we eventually succeeded. And I think the key has been to prove performance, to prove that these ships can perform as good, and I would say maybe even better than standard tankers. And that the cleaning, when our ships come in and have transported grains or sugar or iron ore, that when they have been converted from dry bulk mode to tanker mode, and we have cleaned the cargo tanks, they are as clean as any tank, and maybe even cleaner. And that was a process that took some years. And of course, today we have convinced most. We still have some outstanding, hard to convince target customers, but we have. I think if you go around and you see the list of companies that are using us are long. It's not only the traders that it is easier to convince, but are oil companies like BP, Shell, and so on.
But isn't it quite impressive to know that backdrop, that we need to convince customers and they will not, jump on board straight away, but still do the investment, be stubborn on the vision? Maybe that also say something about the culture in Klaveness, that if we believe something, we're going to see it through. Because it would be quite easy to say that, okay, the market isn't here yet, because you hear that all the time in shipping. The market isn't here, so we can't X, Y, and Z. We have to wait to the market. But sometimes to force it through, of course, it requires perseverance, and but still, it's quite impressive to do that decision.
No, I think I have to give credit to our main owner, Trond Klaveness, that he had the courage to do it. But of course, it has to be said also that we started up only contracting 3 ships. So the first step, we had some sort of a backstop, because we could use them in the CABU trade, and we could phase out the older units a bit prematurely. And then, of course, we got some positive, what we call, feedback from some, that we understood after some time that yes, there is a willingness to listen to reason with some people, and that gave us the confidence to declare the next options.
Yeah.
But still, it was really a brave decision by the Klaveness family to trust that actually we will manage to get through the fog and to convince the oil companies that these ships are as good and as safe. Because whatever value these ships can bring in, if they are not safe, no oil company will ever use them. And of course, that's a fundamental for everything.
Yeah.
That's the starting point, the ticket to trade, as we like to say it.
Yeah, definitely. You perfectly explain the sort of ships you have, and you also expanded a bit on the markets they operate in. But for people listening who are curious about the markets going forward, what is your bird eyes view on the market? Because you explain some of the concepts, of course, and different commodities have different stories, but the overall picture regarding your market, how do you see that going forward?
Of course, we don't have our own market. I mean, we are actually competing against the standard product tankers and the standard dry bulk ships. So we are fully dependent on the underlying standard markets. And of course, we have the advantages we have with the efficiency and also the diversification we have by being in more markets, and also the flexibility of our ships, which we may come back to.
Yeah.
But again, I think there are some important factors. One, of course, is that today you see that despite increasing orders, the order book is quite small in historical context. And that means that we have some sort of predictability when it comes to deliveries and supply growth. And that, of course, goes especially for the dry ships, but also in the tanker space if you look on the totality. So I think that's an important factor for what's coming in next years that give some confidence. And then, of course, the second thing is all the inefficiencies, not created by the trade flows, but created by what's happening in Ukraine, which I know you have been into in some of your other episodes, that it results in very long, what we call longer sailing distances. And then you have the disruptions in the Red Sea, with the Houthis attacking commercial shipping. You have the disruptions with the limited water depth in Panama. So of course it's quite unique, what we call the situation with these disruptions and inefficiencies. That of course part of them will be solved. I mean, Panama, already know we see that there are improvements. The number of ships going through Panama increases. Whether it goes back to normal, we don't know. What will happen in the Red Sea? It's difficult to say, but eventually, there will be a solution to the Red Sea situation. But when it comes to the situation in Ukraine and Russia, in my guess is that it will take a lot of time before we get back to any normality. And then, of course, at least in the start of this year, the demand both in the dry bulk sector and the product tanker sector was very good.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you look ahead, with these, what we call the two fundamentals, how will the market look like? Of course, there are a lot of moving pieces that will decide how good the markets will be. But I think it's, in our mind, and nothing is certain in this industry. It looks good, both for product tankers, even for dry bulk ships. But of course, there you have the even stronger uncertainty on China.
Yeah.
How will the Chinese economy go? With this problem in the property sector, there was a very strong imports of iron ore in the start of the year. We see that the steel production is falling back a little bit. We see inventories are increasing, which makes us believe that maybe that the iron ore shipments will at least reduce a little bit for some quarters. But then also we know that there's a very good grain harvest in both Brazil and US that should increase considerably the shipments of grains. So yeah, so Christopher, we are optimists and believe the fundamentals are good, and that's how background for how we position our fleet.
Yeah. But it's quite interesting to hear you break it down, because when you talk to other pure play, either tankers or dry bulk, they have that market to focus on.
Yeah.
But you sort of have to look at both markets that are a bit different. But can you take us a bit inside the machine? So do you always try to see how to then optimize the different peaks, or is that a given and easy to execute? Or do you need to be very nimble and flexible and quick on seeing? Because the optionality has to be used in order to make account for it.
Absolutely, because on the CABUs, we have a certain possibility to allocate a bit more capacity to the market that are strongest, because they are very industrial, going a bit back and forth. But looking back, typically in 2021, we reletted part of a contract to a product tanker owner, and we put the ship into a dry bulk pool to benefit from the strong dry market. But I think the CLEANBUs are the best, example, because they are extremely flexible in terms that when they come into a loading area, they can either be a dry ship, they could be a tanker for easy chemicals, or a tanker for oil products. So that means that you get this optionality that you can find a cargo that fits best with your dates to avoid waiting time, and of course you choose the cargo that has the highest earnings. So that means that for the CLEANBUs, we like we have seen both in 2023 and also this year, we are trying we are increasing substantially the share of the capacity we use in the tanker market, while we try to to maintain the focus on efficiency and to maintain the relations also with our dry bulk customers. And we do that by typically adding one extra leg. So coming into the US, instead of taking dry out of the US Gulf or US East Coast, we take products south to Brazil. So then you end up with typically tanker cargo from Middle East India to US East Coast, tanker cargo out of US Gulf to South America, and then normally a dry cargo out to Brazil. But if the tanker market is strong enough, you may take vegetable oil, which is a tanker cargo, out of Brazil, because these ships have this capability that typically a LR1 tanker couldn't take, to take vegetable oils. And so that means you then, on a triangular trade, you have then either 2 or 3 tanker trades. And again, you optimize based on earnings, whether you take vegetable oils, which normally is a poor paying tanker cargo, or dry. which is normally a very high-paying dry cargo. So that's the optimization you do all the time. And then, of course, from time to time, if there are typically one, like last autumn, when the tanker market was very strong in the Atlantic, and especially in the US Gulf, we had cargoes ship in South America. We said, let's take benefit of that. We ballasted the ships north to just get the position in a market that's burning hot. So that means that it is nimble. We are following the markets very closely, and we try to get the most of the autumn markets as we can. At the same time, as I said, we continue with our main, what we call, strategy of combining cargoes and maximizing efficiency.
Yeah, that's the perfect explanation. So I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on the culture inside Klaveness, because I've heard great things about it. I think the CEO was quoted that it's the best shipping company to work for in the world. So obviously it looks like from the outside you have a very strong conscience about the culture, building up the people, and not to talk about any other companies, but it seems like people who enter Klaveness has a tendency to stay there for many, many years, which means that it's a good place to be. How would you break down the culture? Obviously, there are different companies inside this organization, but maybe they all have a common theme and a common way of approaching business.
I think so. I think it is, as I said, the company has been around for close to 80 years. And I think innovation has always been, a key. So trying to challenge the existing solutions, trying to try to develop new solutions, and that I think goes into both the dry bulk side, which is an operator, a bit like Western Bulk, and I think where part of their success is again developing, using technology to improve their trading, even artificial intelligence. They are working a little bit on that. So developing models to do, having a lot of mathematicians to develop, trading models to optimize. But of course, that's a trading shop. They do not own a ship. Their ships can go everywhere, so I think that is also the innovation of pools, where I think Klaveness is one of the first developing these pool systems, where you operate ships on behalf of other ship owners to create scale of operation. We have in Klaveness, you have Klaveness Digital that develops these supply chain management systems for industries. And that, of course, started up with the shipping business, starting up with knowledge of customers, seeing the problems that were there. And of course, also in the company I'm responsible for, of course, the developing new solutions, seeing the inefficiencies, solving them, building systems so you can, choosing the trades where it pays, and I think the mentality is, again, always be a bit curious, experiment, and also having the willingness to experiment, meaning the culture that, what we have this mantra, try a little, learn a lot. And that is quite important, because if you're not willing to try and to fail, you are never going to succeed. Because if you are too afraid of failing, you will never dare to experiment. So I think this curiosity, this drive is something that has been a reason why Klaveness has been a successful group over many years. And as you know, if you look back in history books, there are a lot of ship owners that are not there anymore, because it's a really difficult industry to navigate, and fortunes are easily lost. So this. But it's also a company that is long-term minded, but also conservative. That you know which risks you take, and you plan. And I know the best way to lose my job is if I don't have cash.
Yeah.
No, we are so basically you ensure that you plan your business, you plan your cash, you you have conservative balance sheet, because there are so much risks in this industry. If you're not really running your shop in a relatively conservative financial way, it's easy to fail.
Yeah. But but still, you have 12 people there, and you of course have the entire organization. So a lot of people who listens to this podcast wants to make an exciting and fulfilling career. And you've probably seen so many talents come inside the organization. Some go all the way to the top. Some maybe disappear for a while. Do you have any perspective on talent development? Have you seen anything that works in the long run? Because it seems like, of course, shipping is an industry where you sort of have to build, knowledge on top of knowledge and always be curious. So in your mind, if you have any advice to talents who wants to have an exciting career, have you seen anything, principles that is very important to apply in order to build that career?
I think if you start up, from a company's perspective, I think it is, for Klaveness, we are a small shop. That means if you end up in our company, you can always find a place in another part of the group if that is opportunity rise. But I think for us, we've seen to attract talent to our business. I think the fact that we are introducing some sort of mission. It's not only money. It's something more, because you get a bit tired. I mean, if it's only money, and of course we are built differently. You and me, Christopher, we are built differently, but we see that young people are attracted to something more than money. It's something that you are developing new solutions. You're on the forefront of testing out the newest in energy efficiency measures. You're developing new commercial models with your customers that no one else are doing. You're building new concepts that are solving big challenges and waste and inefficiency in the industry. That you are testing out new digital solutions. I mean, I think that has been one of the keys for Klaveness to attract talent, is that you are innovating. You are being a part of something more than just trading excellence and buying and selling ships. Yeah. So, and I think for a young man or woman coming into the industry, I think you have to find what drives you. What makes you wake up in the morning and love to go to work? And at least the way my mind is built is, and I have always been more attractive on building systems that can create value for customers and for shareholders over time. And that's why I'm so fortunate to work in the company I work for.
That's a great answer. So time is going so fast, so I have some quick fire questions that I want to just ask you when I have the time. So one of the question I would ask you, since you have this deep passion about decarbonization and you're working on the forefront on it, is if you as a company or as a person could set any global policies in ocean transportation, what would you do to ensure the best possible future?
I think you are in a very important question, because what we are seeing, we are just in front of us the new regulations for ensuring that shipping industry starts with the decarbonization. Because if you look around, it's very little that actually have happened to date in shipping. And if you take away the nice glossy ESG reports and you dig into a bit further down, you will see that there are some leaders, and I think we are among them, but there are very little that actually has happened to date. So you need effective regulations, and I think there are, and IMO of course has promised to agree what they call the medium-term measures within end of next year. And what you need there is legislation that actually consists of more pieces that are mutually strengthening. And one is, of course, you need a carbon price. It has to cost money to emit carbon, to have a lot of carbon emission. So a carbon price is important. And we see in Europe, in EU, from early part of this year, shipping, trading in Europe and in and out of Europe has to pay a carbon price, which is then in this emission trading scheme in Europe. The second part you need is, of course, a legislation that drives the change of fuel. And of course, that is you need to promote the use of fuel with a lower carbon intensity, and that is and that EU has done in a good way as well. From early next year, you have something called EU Fuel Maritime, that actually there is a stepwise increase in the share of new type of low carbon fuels you have to use into your fuel blend. It's very small in the start, but there's this what we call scale up that gives predictability to how the world requires you to start burning a new type of fuels. So that is very important, and I do hope that IMO will also include that part. And then the third part is to have stricter requirements to how the ships are built, which is an EEXI or EEDI. So I think the totality of that is so critical to get the shipping industry moving, because it's not an easy task to decarbonize shipping.
Definitely. You did an interesting drinking experiment during your shipping in the garden party where you had 4 types of, I don't know if it was slush or anything, but it was biofuel, methanol, ammonia, and LNG.
Yeah.
Did you get any data from what drinks people chose, or is it too little data to decide what people are into?
I think firstly the drinks were not too successful in taste, but anyway, I think ammonia was the one that had more takes, but it reflects the very difficult choice to which fuel will be the winning fuel for the shipping industry. In my mind, that would be a mix, because the different fuels will fit into different part of the industry, so it's important not to be square-headed and fall into some sort of a camp whether you believe one fuel or another. I think our take is that typically ammonia it's more expensive to prepare the ship, it's more difficult to run, but it's also a fuel that probably will have a lower, what we call, price, because it uses less green energy to produce it compared to methanol. But methanol is easier to run, less expensive, so then it's all a question of the size and the cost to your ship, the fuel consumption, the sailing distances, and so on. Definitely. So that is, but the drink test, it was a fun thing. It was a gag, but I think you can't read too much out of it.
Okay, so do you have any shipping companies or ocean-based company outside of Klaveness who has impressed you recently?
I think there's a lot of impressive companies around, but of course, with my mindset, of course, I favor the companies that are building business over time, and I think in Norwegian perspective, I think Wilhelmsen is an example how a company built piece by piece, building a system that I think probably is the strongest in the world when it comes to ro-ro and cargoes, where it's not only the ships, it's the land-based systems, it's this industrial mentality to build over time and to strengthen and to give value to their customers. So I have to, if I should choose one, I think Wallenius Wilhelmsen is quite an impressive company in the car carrier sector.
I agree. So another question I was very curious about was that we have a lot of people also listening who are entrepreneurs, love to build new ideas, and you have said that specialization in shipping has created a lot of inefficiencies, giving the story of why KCC has been brought on. But do you see any topics or things that a young entrepreneur or an older entrepreneur for that sake should look into? Because there should be a lot of innovation opportunities here. So have you come across many interesting aspects of shipping industry where maybe a new company starting from maybe another industry can make a really truly impact?
I think as we started up with that, there are so much inefficiency in this business, and also I think the innovation when it comes to making our ships more efficient has not come far enough, and unfortunately, when we look at the new solutions that are presented, there are too few that comes out of the Norwegian business environment. We had one, which was quite fun, we had a company called Shipshave that actually produces these semi-autonomous drones that clean the ship side when the ship is in transit. And I think we were probably the first ones starting to use it. We worked together with them to develop it. And we now have the drones on board all our ships. And that is also what we say to people coming to us, that, we are there to help you developing it if we believe in it. And if we like it, we will buy for all our fleet, and we can help you market it, to just give some sort of not a would call a stamp that it works for us. And because that's what I really would promote innovators to focus on. How can we reduce the carbon footprint? How can we transport more cargo with less fuel? Because that, in order to succeed with the transition to new fuels, you need to be far more efficient. That is because the new fuel costs 3.5 times what the fuel costs today. So if you can transport cargo with half the fuel per ton transported, you'll come a long way.
Definitely. So the next question, I saw DNV had a report about this exact topic, but best city or hub to build a shipping career. I think Oslo was ranked 5th, maybe. So from your perspective, what are like the cities with most talent, most tailwind in order to build a shipping career?
I think it's difficult. I think Oslo has a lot of possibilities. The interesting thing is it's a complete shipping cluster, because you have everything from finance, class, insurance, ship owners, equipment suppliers, and so on. But of course, Singapore is very exciting, because there you have both all the traders. You have a lot of big customers that have their base, typically the big Australian miners. Also the big oil companies mainly have their Asian base in Singapore, and also a lot of ship owners. So that's a very exciting, cluster, and I think it's probably ranked as number one. Dubai is coming up, and then of course, whether you like Dubai or not, that is your choice. But of course, a lot of things are happening there as well. But I have to say I favor Singapore for Dubai, even though Dubai is definitely expanding the shipping cluster.
But if you look at the crewing and as well, you have offices in Philippines, right? So that's also an important aspect, because they have so many seafarers and,
They do, and we have also quite a big office there that are assisting us on various parts of our business, everything from operations to purchasing to ship management tasks and crewing. But of course, it doesn't have it's more difficult coming in as a Norwegian trying to get a career in the Filipino market, because it's still quite limited in which type of services they provide.
Yeah. So just a couple of quick questions left. I know we're running out of time, but best place to build a new and modern ship today? Are you a bit biased towards China, or is there a strong case that China will overtake, Korea and Japan?
I think it for our type of ships, which are specialized and which are not built in big series. Of course, China is at the moment the only place we can build. Of course, the Koreans and the Japanese are of course experts in efficiency, big series over time, automating. And if you go to some of these Japanese shipyards, seeing how fast from the first steel plate to the ship is delivered to the ship owner is only a couple of months. That's just impressive. And of course, China has the challenges that they have, of course, also increasing cost. But it could be, what I hear is that what's happening in the property sector are releasing employees that maybe go to the shipping industry. So yes, I do believe China is the place to build, at least for us. And then hopefully there could be other nations coming. Maybe Vietnam could expand. They have a couple of good shipyards, but I haven't seen any big expansion coming in there. So China is the place to build.
And so the last question, we typically ask our guests for any favorite books or any recommendations. Do you have any books, or have you been too busy working?
Unfortunately, because it is too much working. But of course, in holidays, I try to read. And one author I like very much is the Japanese Murakami. That has, a lot of books that has this, of course, it's Japanese flavor, but at least also a bit, what you call fantasy, a little bit, not too much, but it's very much reality. It mixes in a nice way. I think the last one I read is a book called Killing the Commendator or something like that, which is quite fascinating. I liked it a lot.
Well, we'll share that for sure, because that's an original take. I never heard about it. So let's link to that, and people can check it out if they want to.
Yep.
Okay, Engebret, thank you so much for taking the time. It was a pleasure having you on, and I hope we can do it again in the future, and good luck for the future as well.
Thank you, Christoph, again for having me. It was great fun to be in this podcast with you.